So, I know one word in Portuguese. Obrigado. Thank you very much for inviting me to visit you here in São Paulo. I just arrived yesterday, so I've had very little chance to enjoy your city. But I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that I can contribute to making São Paulo and other Brazilian cities nicer places. Let me first of all say my presentation is about why encourage more efficient transportation in Brazilian cities. Later on, I'll give a presentation on how to encourage more efficient transportation in Brazilian cities. So this one, I'm talking about why. Cities are wonderful places if you work hard to make them livable. So, our job is to try and create paradise on earth. Are you up for it? Are you ready? Okay, it's a very challenging job, but nobody else is doing it. Who else is in charge of creating paradise on earth? It's planners. Raise your hand if you're an engineer. How many engineers? How many planners are in this room? Okay. How many students? Raise your hand if you're a student. And how many public officials? Somebody who's elected or appointed to a government agency. Okay. So I'm glad to see that I am within my tribe. You are my tribe. You are planners and engineers and public officials. And our job is to try and create paradise on earth in places like São Paulo. Now, I'm going to use the term sustainability. Sustainability emphasizes the integrated nature of human activities and therefore the need to coordinate planning among different sectors, jurisdictions, and groups. A lot of people misunderstand this. They think sustainability is just environmental sustainability. But my definition of sustainability is all of these. So it includes economic development, and it includes social objectives like making sure that we're fair to poor people and that we're maximizing public health and affordability, and we're doing things to make our communities better. So this is my definition of sustainability. So let me ask you this. If everybody in São Paulo drove an electric car, would that be a sustainable transportation system in São Paulo? No? Why not? Because driving an electric car doesn't reduce traffic congestion. It doesn't reduce parking problems. It doesn't reduce the cost to households of purchasing cars or operating cars. It doesn't help people who can't drive. It doesn't help achieve social equity. And let me ask you this. Would you rather be run over by an electric car than a gasoline-powered car? It doesn't matter. Okay, and let me compliment you on that many of you seem to speak English, and I can tell because you laugh at my jokes. So thank you very much for laughing at my jokes. Okay, so let's think about the way we used to think that we were going to solve our transportation problems. So we used to apply an engineering model. So we thought all we needed to do was improve the vehicles. So you can go to the science fiction literature from half a century ago. And they used to predict that we weren't going to have traffic congestion because we were all going to have flying cars or jetpacks. So you weren't going to have to drive anywhere. And you would travel on a Segway. You wouldn't have to walk. And when you did travel to another city, you'd hop on a supersonic jet, and your car would be self-driving. And how many of you saw the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, which predicted that in 2001, which is 13 years ago, you were going to be able to fly to the moon on a Pan Am spaceship? Okay? Now, what's the reality? Raise your hand if you got here today in a flying car. Just raise your hand. What about a jetpack? Who got here with a jetpack? Okay, who's flown on a supersonic jet? Raise your hands if you flew on a supersonic jet. Nobody? Okay. But there is, and who's been to the moon? Raise your hand if you've been to the moon. Okay, so they promised us a future in the 21st century where our transportation problems were going to disappear because we would have faster and bigger and flying vehicles. What's the reality? There is one important new form of transportation that is new to our century. It is the 21st century mode of transportation. I can almost guarantee if you look at your parents' holiday or your parents' honeymoon photos, they didn't use this. What is the new mode of transportation that really has improved our lives? I'll bet half the people in this room have used it, and your parents never used it. What is that? Wheeled luggage. How many of you have used wheeled luggage in the past 2 months? Sure. Wheeled luggage is freight transport for pedestrians, and it really has improved our lives. Now, I want to remind you, this wheeled luggage, it's just a form of walking. What is the most important form of transportation for everybody? Walking. And an incremental improvement in our ability to walk and get around a city when we're walking is a true improvement in the quality of our lives. And yet, it's practically invisible. Transportation engineers in Sao Paulo or in Rio de Janeiro or in any other city in the world, they are not thinking about wheeled luggage. In fact, I did have a chance to walk around the neighborhood I'm staying in. What's the name of our neighborhood? Itain. So we were in Itain, and I looked at the sidewalks. Now, Sao Paulo has improved roads for cars, and now it's got bus-only lanes, and it's got bicycle rentals. It's got the electronic public bikes. But does it have sidewalks that are good for people using wheeled luggage? No. It's terrible for walking. The sidewalks are narrow, they're rough, the curb cuts are poor. Another thing I noticed is there's almost nobody in a wheelchair on your city streets. If we design our cities for wheeled luggage and people using wheelchairs and parents pushing children in baby buggies, we have created a city that serves everybody. Rich and poor, abled and disabled, tourists and people who live here. That is really what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about creating a city where everybody can get around, even if they have a disability or they're pushing a baby carriage or they have wheeled luggage. And that is the true sustainable transportation system. That is the true city that reflects sustainable transportation. Now, for the last half century, we've had a cycle that's been encouraging people to drive cars. So you had increased vehicle ownership, more automobile-oriented transportation planning. You had worse walking and bicycling and public transit, so the travel options declined. And then they became stigmatized. So, your grandparents probably traveled around using public transportation. Even if they were wealthy professionals, they could ride the bus and feel proud. What about now? Does a professional feel proud when they use the bus? Does it give a sense of dignity when you get on a bus in Sao Paulo? No. Okay. That, I think, is the most important change that you could achieve in Sao Paulo, is to make it attractive to people who wear neckties and women who are wearing high-heeled shoes and pretty dresses. When you achieve that, okay, or let me put it a different way. When a young man asks a girl out on a date, and he doesn't have a car, and he says, we're going to go on a date on the bus, is he embarrassed? That needs to change. And which means that the future of Sao Paulo's transportation is in the hands of young women, because they're the ones that decide what is considered a good date. Now, let me ask you this. If there are two young men, both asking a young woman out on a date, and one has a car, and one says, we're going to go by bicycle and public transportation, who should the young woman choose? The guy that has a car is wasting all of his money on the car. He's got no money left over to spend on his girl. The young woman, if she's rational, she'll say, let's go on the bus. Because she'll choose the guy that invites her on a date on the bus because he has more money to spend on her and not waste on his car. Okay, so let me just continue that we had this cycle going on. And this happened all over the world. It's not unique to Sao Paulo. Pretty much every city in the world between 1940 and 1990 was in this cycle of sprawl and automobile dependency. Now, some cities in the world are reversing this. We're seeing a new cycle where they're investing in walking and cycling and public transit, where automobile ownership is saturating and it's starting to decline. Young people are proud of not owning a car. You know, most young people would care more about their mobile phone than their car. If you ask a teenager, what would you rather have? A really good computer and a mobile phone with an unlimited telephone package or a car? Which will they choose? The phone and the computer. And that's actually very good news. It's an opportunity for us to focus on efficiency.